Hello? Hi, it's Debs. Debs, and I'm trying to stream live the court documents of Cassie versus Diddy. I'm so sorry, just give me a moment here. I'm trying to get some court documents. I'm just trying to figure this out. It's been quite a while since I've done this. Last I checked, you were not able to view what I was reading, which is kind of a problem. So just give me one sec. I just want to make sure that you can... Okay, that's an improvement for sure. Okay, I just want to make sure you can see what the fuck it is that I'm reading, because from what I saw before, you couldn't, which completely just defies the purpose of everything that we're doing here. So, sorry, just bear with me. Okay, perfect. You can now see what I'm saying, and I can now respond to anyone if they are here. Hopefully, someone will watch. So, I've already kind of read the beginning parts of this so far. So, let's get right to the meat and potatoes of this. So, what we are reading right now is the court documents of Cassie versus Diddy. Actually, one more thing before we get into it. I'm just going to share this on... sorry. On, Twitter, in hopes that someone will actually watch this. Let's see. Let's share this, and then we can just get right into it. Hopefully, you guys will care to watch. So yeah, I've shared this, and I just want to get into the meat and potatoes of this, which is the factual allegations of what Cassie basically was saying that Diddy did. So yeah, let's just get right into it. So it says here, teenage Cassie meets middle-aged P. Diddy as her career begins. So, Cassie met P. Diddy in late 2005 or early 2006 after Diddy heard Cassie's first single playing in a club and expressed interest in signing her to his label Bad Boy Records. At the time, Cassie was 19 years old and P. Diddy was 37 years old. And within months, in February 2006, Cassie was signed a 10-album deal with P. Diddy's record label. That is insane. That is actually really fucking insane. 10-album deal. Because if you think about it, most artists, I would say at average, release like an album every 2 years. So that's like a 20-year average deal, which is insane. Wow, that's crazy. But anyways, let's carry on. Cassie's first album, which is named after herself, Cassie, was released in August 2006, which debuted at number 4 on the US Billboard 200. And to promote the album, Cassie made television appearances on MTV's Total Request Live and BET's 106 and Park. Cassie suffered from significant performance anxiety during these appearances, and press outlets were highly critical of Miss Ventura's performances on these shows. P. Diddy, however, sought to rehabilitate his newly signed talent, telling MTV News that you could hear the nervousness in her voice, and to be honest, I kind of smiled at it because it made me really appreciate what I really love about her. She's just a regular person. It just made me appreciate that she got nervous, and it was kind of cute to me, to be honest. You've got to understand that success for her is coming out of nowhere. It's just so huge, and sometimes everyone handles it differently. But clearly paternalistic in noting that it was cute to him how regular Cassie appeared, P. Diddy's comments rang true to some extent. Upon signing with Bad Boy Records, Cassie was quickly thrust into the spotlight and was unfamiliar with how to navigate her new celebrity status. P. Diddy's recognition and glorification of Cassie's naivete provided to set the groundwork for his manipulative and coercive romantic and sexual relationship with Cassie, a woman nearly 2 decades his junior. And yeah, hold on, just give me one sec. Within a year of signing with Bad Boy Records, P. Diddy became deeply entrenched in Cassie's life, almost immediately asserting possession and control over her, and inserting himself into all aspects of her career and personal life. In November 2006, P. Diddy invited Cassie to perform his song Come To Me with him at the MTV Europe Music Awards in Copenhagen, Denmark. After rehearsal for the performance, P. Diddy walked around in a robe with a drink in his hand, flaunting his lavish party lifestyle to his label's newly signed artist. During hair and makeup leading up to the performance, Cassie's hairstylist and P. Diddy's makeup artist told Cassie that Mr. Combs, or P. Diddy, was interested in Cassie. And Cassie shrugged off that gossip and in fact expressed disgust given the large age gap between her and the president of her record label. And emphasizing the age and power dynamic early on in their working relationship, P. Diddy positioned himself as a father figure and protector of Cassie. And by way of example, after returning to New York after a trip to Las Vegas, during which she endured a brief hospital stay, Cassie, who by then was fully healthy, went out to a club with her friends. And when P. Diddy saw her out, he reprimanded her, telling her to go home and take care of herself. And at the time, she thought that that was her record label looking out for her well-being and that P. Diddy had her best interests in mind. And P. Diddy also ensured that he was intertwined with Cassie's personal and social life. For instance, inviting her himself to Cassie's 21st birthday party in Las Vegas, to which he also brought along famous music producers and musicians, thereby flaunting his celebrity status and influence in front of a very young and impressionable Cassie. And although that P. Diddy knew that Cassie was in a relationship at the time, and even though he was publicly in a relationship with Kim Porter, P. Diddy nevertheless pursued Cassie. At an after party at a hotel suite following Cassie's 21st birthday party, P. Diddy pulled Cassie into a bathroom and forcibly kissed her. Cassie did not consent to this unwanted contact. She immediately ran out of the bathroom and the hotel suite and cried. She told her best friend at the time about what happened, but was too scared to tell anyone else. And obviously, he had placed himself in a position of power to her, of course. And I'm sure she felt scared to say anything because she probably felt like if she made a big stinker scene about it, maybe she'd get dropped. Maybe that would be the end of her career as a singer. So she was in a predicament, I would say, at that time, which is scary. There's a power dynamic there. And at the Video Music Awards the following day, Cassie's boyfriend at the time joined her and P. Diddy at a table at the award ceremony. P. Diddy became angry, telling Cassie that the invitation to the award ceremony was only for her and not for her significant other. Interesting. So essentially what it reads like to me, allegedly, whatever, but it reads like to me that it was very much a grooming situation. Like he knew what it was going into, and also the 10-album deal. Like it was very much eyes on the prize, long-term situation. At least allegedly, my opinion. But let's carry on. So it says, P. Diddy lures Cassie into a relationship. Despite Cassie's clear rejection of P. Diddy's advances, P. Diddy continued to demand that Cassie spend time with him, including for a weekend at P. Diddy's residence in Miami and for nights out in New York City. Which, side note, again, puts her in a predicament because it's difficult to differentiate. Is this like a work scenario, work situation? Are you inviting me here because it's to put myself out there, to network, to meet people? Or are you doing this simply to be alone with me? So in that situation, it's difficult to differentiate. And how can you? Because you're just, imagine just being like a little baby artist and P. Diddy wants to work with you. You're just gonna just go with the flow. Like, what are you gonna say? No? I mean, it's a dream come true for someone. So I can understand how she was in a predicament in that situation. But anyway, we can carry on. So it says, on one particular night, around September 2007, P. Diddy insisted on taking Cassie out. Cassie acquiesced, fearing that rejecting P. Diddy would have, which is precisely what I just said. She feared that rejecting P. Diddy's request would have repercussions for her record or album deal with P. Diddy and his company, Bad Boy Records. So it says, P. Diddy picked up Cassie from her apartment in Manhattan in a blue luxury vehicle. Cassie was surprised that when she got into the car that P. Diddy was already inebriated. He handed her a pill and told her to take it. When Cassie asked what the pill was, P. Diddy dismissed her and told her that she would like it. She later learned that the pill was ecstasy, something that she had never tried before and did not want to try. And that this was the first time that P. Diddy had got her high. And then P. Diddy then proceeded to drive recklessly at very high speeds down the West Side Highway of Manhattan. Cassie was very scared, but did not dare to object to P. Diddy, who appeared drunk, high, and agitated. P. Diddy took Cassie to an upscale lounge in downtown Manhattan, where he proceeded to get into an altercation with the security staff who would not permit P. Diddy to enter, presumably because he was belligerent. Cassie decided to go home, but for the remainder of the night, P. Diddy messaged Cassie incessantly, complaining that she left him high and alone. I'm presuming that that's a spelling mistake. In early fall 2007, P. Diddy flexed his power and influence when he paid a promoter to create a fake flyer for a party hosted by Cassie. This fake posting allowed Cassie to have an excuse to go to Miami, Florida, and get away from her boyfriend by using the guise of a legitimate event that she had to attend. Cassie was stunned at how easily P. Diddy was able to recruit others to lie for him. And side note, I noticed that Miami, Florida, that's kind of one of his hot spots that people seem to refer to. Moving on, Cassie was uncomfortable with the fake flyer, but because the request to go to Miami was made by the owner of her record label, and because she was scared to go against his wishes and face repercussions to her nascent career, Cassie agreed to join P. Diddy in Florida. During this trip to Miami, P. Diddy provided Cassie with copious amounts of drugs. She became more intoxicated than she ever had before. And her intoxication lasted through the weekend trip. As she wanted P. Diddy to continue to support her career, she felt that she could not refuse P. Diddy's urging her to take more drugs. After providing her with drugs, P. Diddy had sexual intercourse with Cassie during this trip. Within 2 years of meeting P. Diddy, Cassie found herself lured into the immediate circle of her boss, which was the owner of her record label and one of the most powerful men in the entertainment industry. How P. Diddy exerted control over Cassie's career and personal life. From the very start of the relationship, P. Diddy exerted his power and influence over Cassie. This dynamic was fueled by their nearly 20-year age difference, as well as their relative positions in the entertainment industry, with P. Diddy considered a music mogul, and Cassie was at the very start of her career as an entertainer, and I believe she was like 21 at the time, if I remember correctly. She was just a literal baby. And P. Diddy's aggressive and demanding approach to those that he worked with made it impossible for anyone to challenge him, and Cassie soon learned that P. Diddy insisted on blind loyalty from anyone in his inner circle. And although Cassie had saved up some earnings from her young modeling career, P. Diddy's ostentatious display of wealth was intimidating to her. P. Diddy paid for things with wads of cash and would repeatedly tell Cassie, "Don't worry about money, I have money." P. Diddy's expensed lavish vacations for him and Cassie, purchased a car for her, paid for her apartment, and provided her with extensive amounts of designer clothing. Around 2008 or 2009, P. Diddy began to rent an apartment in Manhattan for Cassie. The apartment was within walking distance of P. Diddy's New York residence. He first showed Cassie the apartment by bringing her there along with her parents. And Cassie's parents were skeptical of the mogul's displays of wealth, but proud of their daughter's newfound success. And around 2010, P. Diddy similarly paid for an apartment for Cassie in Los Angeles, which was located 5 minutes away from P. Diddy's residence. And he paid for many of her apartments in California, and also purchased a Jaguar for her around 2013 or 2014. Also, side note, one thing that I've heard, I mean, I don't know if it's true, it's all alleged, but is sometimes these like rich people will buy you a car, but they'll put something like in the car to track it. I don't know if that's true, but just, I don't know. No one's ever bought me a car, but I'm just saying, be careful. Oh, I mean, if someone buy you a car, let's be so for real, you'd take the car. But anyway, let's go on. All aspects of Cassie's life were controlled by either P. Diddy or his management companies. Every event that Cassie attended, from the travel to the makeup and clothing, were paid for by P. Diddy and his affiliated companies. Compounding this all-encompassing intrusion into her life, P. Diddy secured his control over the young and impressionable Cassie by introducing her to a drug-fueled lifestyle that kept her complacent and compliant. P. Diddy first introduced Cassie to opiates. Oh shit, that's not a joke. Around 2008, and often have pills and other drugs out in the open like candy. Upon information and belief, P. Diddy has been addicted to prescription painkillers and took ecstasy frequently. At first, Cassie was given the prescriptions that P. Diddy received from a doctor in Miami, Florida. Eventually, when P. Diddy exhausted his supply of pills, he demanded that Cassie procure prescriptions from this Miami doctor in her own name. P. Diddy also became deeply involved in Cassie's personal life, with his personal staff attending to Cassie's day-to-day travel and her other needs, including medical care. On multiple occasions, P. Diddy had Cassie's personal medical records sent directly to his email address. For instance, when Cassie began experiencing memory loss, potentially due to excessive drug use and or head injuries caused by P. Diddy's beatings, as described below, her MRI results were provided directly to P. Diddy. P. Diddy also repeatedly arranged for his staff to drive Cassie to certain doctors' appointments. In this way, P. Diddy exerted ownership over Cassie. As another example of the ways in which he manipulated Cassie and ensured obedience early on in their relationship, he asked Cassie what she called her grandfather. And when Cassie said that she referred to her grandfather as Pop Pop, P. Diddy perversely insisted that Cassie referred to him with that nickname. Oh my god, that's fucking weird, dude. So, I guess this is where things kind of come to a head, and this is where P. Diddy and Cassie's relationship becomes violent and abusive. And it says here, what started as a whirlwind of celebrity meetings and drug and alcohol-fueled parties, however, quickly turned frightening and violent. Cassie was also exposed to the intense violence that pervaded P. Diddy's rise to fame. For example, on one occasion, when P. Diddy and Cassie were using drugs together in his home, one of his security staff barged in and announced that Suge Knight, a longtime rival of P. Diddy, was spotted at Mel's Drive-In Diner in Los Angeles. P. Diddy began to get dressed, retrieved multiple guns from a safe, and ran out of his home to where he believed Mr. Knight was dining. And then Cassie became terrified and began to cry. On at least 2 occasions, P. Diddy demanded that Cassie hold P. Diddy's guns in her purse. Cassie had no familiarity with guns and was petrified that the gun would accidentally go off in her purse. There is no clear reason why P. Diddy required her to hold his guns, except to reinforce to his young girlfriend that he was violent, powerful, and dangerous. Over the next decade, multiple times each year, Mr. Combs, P. Diddy, would violently beat Cassie, leaving bruises on her body. After every instance in which she beat Miss Ventura, Mr. Combs used his money and power to orchestrate extensive efforts to hide the evidence of his abuse, including by hiding Cassie in hotels for days at a time to let her bruises heal. In one such instance, after a party with Jay-Z, P. Diddy beat Cassie repeatedly in an Escalade, including by kicking it and hitting her. He forced her out of the vehicle on 5th Avenue in New York City. She was eventually able to hail a cab and get to her apartment in Manhattan, where she cried in fear, realizing there was no one she could tell about what had happened at the hands of this incredibly powerful man. She spent the subsequent 3 days hiding in her apartment. In January 2009, after P. Diddy learned that Cassie spoke to another music manager at a party in LA, he became enraged. She'd hoped speaking to this manager would allow her to further grow her career and that P. Diddy would be happy for her. But instead, he became extremely angry and pulled her out of the club where the party was taking place. In the car leaving the club, P. Diddy beat Cassie, pushing her into the corner of the vehicle and stomping on her face. P. Diddy's security staff, Roger Bonds, tried to stop the beating, but was unable to de-escalate the situation. When the car arrived at P. Diddy's residence, Cassie attempted to run away, but P. Diddy followed her and proceeded to again kick her in the face. Cassie was bleeding profusely and was ushered into P. Diddy's home, where she began to throw up from the violent assault. Imagine being beaten so badly that you're throwing up. That's insane. Let's move on. Upon recognizing the damage he had done and the physical evidence of his abuse, P. Diddy panicked and forced his staff to bring Cassie to a hotel suite at the London Hotel in Los Angeles, where she was required to stay for a week. During the stay, as her injuries from the beating healed, Cassie began to fully realize that P. Diddy's tremendously loyal network not only knew about and witnessed her assault, but also that these witnesses were not willing to do anything meaningful to stop P. Diddy's behavior. She recognized that she was powerless and that reporting P. Diddy to the authorities would not alter P. Diddy's status or influence, but would merely give P. Diddy another excuse to hurt her. While in the hotel, she asked to go home to her parents, but P. Diddy wouldn't let her leave. She lied to her mother when asked about an online gossip that reported the assault. Wow, that's crazy. Oh. But I mean, in a way, I can kind of understand because, had she been honest with her mom and told her mom, because, as a mom, you're going to say something or do something, and maybe she knew that it would actually put her mother in danger to do so. Isn't that crazy to take a minute and really think about that? That she probably didn't. She lied to her mother to protect her mother. Not only herself, but to protect her mother, because she probably knew if her mother spoke about her abuse that something would happen to her mother. Is that not wild? And then it says, P. Diddy proceeded to instruct his assistant to purchase excessive amounts of gifts for Cassie, which were delivered to the hotel room where she remained trapped. Cassie was terrified, isolated, and unable to see a pathway out of P. Diddy's abusive hold on her life. She found herself becoming numb to the abuse she was experiencing and became entirely beholden to P. Diddy's demands. She began to blindly follow his instructions out of fear of again being on the receiving end of a vicious beating. By P. Diddy's own admission, his relationship with Cassie was like Bobby and Whitney. A clear acknowledgement of the unequal power dynamic and excessive domestic violence that permeated their relationship. From the outside looking in, Cassie had heard others refer to her relationship with P. Diddy as akin to Ike and Tina. Her volatile and abusive partner, who also owned her label and therefore held her future success in his hands, had fully exerted control over every aspect of her life. P. Diddy forces Cassie into sex trafficking. Within a few months of beginning a romantic relationship with 40-year-old P. Diddy, the 22-year-old Cassie felt beholden to his whims and demands. While in New York City, P. Diddy told Cassie that he wanted to engage in a fantasy of his own called voyeurism. P. Diddy said that it would turn him on if he saw Cassie with another dick. The first time, P. Diddy hired a man and brought the man to his home in Los Angeles. The man, P. Diddy, and Cassie wore masquerade masks and ingested drugs. P. Diddy directed Cassie to perform sexual acts with this man while P. Diddy watched them. He masturbated while he directed Cassie and the man to do specific sexual acts. The entire encounter lasted multiple days. P. Diddy began to call the arrangement a freak-off, or FO. He would repeatedly tell Cassie at random moments that he wanted an FO, and Cassie was eventually expected to facilitate the location and hiring of male sex workers. At certain points during Cassie and P. Diddy's relationship, he would insist on an FO weekly. P. Diddy would repeatedly tell Cassie that this practice was our thing and our secret. Sorry, I lost my place. And our secret. Oh, God. Hold on. Sorry, I lost my place. FOs would often take place in hotel suites, including at the Trump International Hotel in Columbus Circle. Everything circles back to Trump. L'Hermitage, Beverly Hills, the London Hotel in Los Angeles, the Intercontinental Century City, the Intercontinental Atlanta, the Intercontinental New York City, the One Hotel in New York and in Miami, and the Mandarin Oriental Hotel in New York and in Miami, the Fontainebleau in Miami, the Beverly Hills Hotel, and Shutters on the Beach in Los Angeles. Sorry, I'm just trying to vape a little bit here. Okay. On one occasion, around 2013, P. Diddy had an FO set up at the Intercontinental Hotel in New York City, after which he was charged with tens of thousands of dollars in damages by the hotel. Upon information and belief, P. Diddy's chief of staff, Tony Fletcher, paid the invoice charged by the hotel. Cassie was eventually instructed to use websites and escort services to find male sex workers to participate in the FOs. P. Diddy told Cassie to search for large black penises on the website. Sometimes P. Diddy would pay to fly male sex workers to his location, including to multiple cities in the United States as well as abroad. He required Cassie and his staff to help make these arrangements. P. Diddy's assistants would help set up the FOs, including by setting up the hotel suites with baby oil and Astroglide, which in retrospect, how they found, what was it, 1,000 bottles of baby oil, allegedly, for P. Diddy. And I remember people were like, oh, what does he need, like, 1,000 bottles of baby oil for? And I was just like, he's being accused of sex trafficking. You like use your head. What do you think baby oil like? I don't know. Maybe as a lube. I don't know. Just saying. So, and according to what Cassie's saying, kind of Astroglide and baby oil. It says, P. Diddy always supplied Cassie and the sex worker with copious amounts of drugs before and during the FOs. And that Cassie was given ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, ketamine, marijuana, and alcohol in excessive amounts during these FOs, which allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. It became commonplace to get IV fluids in the days after FOs to recover from the excessive substances pushed onto her. And Cassie was required to dress up in lingerie and that P. Diddy insisted that she wear white nail polish to contrast her nails with the skin of the black men that he hired to have sex with her. What a sick fuck. What a sick fuck. During the FO, P. Diddy would instruct Cassie to pour excessive amounts of oil over herself. P. Diddy would then instruct Cassie and the sex workers to speak to each other and then specifically tell Cassie where to touch the sex workers. P. Diddy would say things like, grab that big black dick, and ask her how does it feel as she directed her to perform for him. I don't know, maybe this is a reach, but it's kind of, from the sounds of it, giving someone that has internalized, I don't know, like, someone that maybe has, because it doesn't make sense to me. Why are you just so taken, it's neither here nor there, but clearly there's something very wrong with all of this. And why do you just want to live so vicariously through her about grabbing that big black dick? Clearly, there's something deeper about that. But let's carry on. During these FOs, in addition to directing Cassie and masturbating, P. Diddy would use his phone, laptop, and tablet to film Cassie having sex with the hired sex worker. He treated the forced encounter as a personal art project, adjusting the candles he used for lighting to frame the videos that he took. And while Cassie quickly deleted any photographs or video of sex acts if they were taken on her phone, P. Diddy repeatedly made clear that he retained many videos of Cassie during these FOs or freak outs. Even when she deleted the videos, P. Diddy would tell Cassie that he was able to recover deleted videos from her devices. On one occasion, he sat next to her on a flight and made her watch a video she thought she had deleted, reinforcing her inability to escape and the immense power that he held over her. And P. Diddy would pay the male sex workers a few $1,000s in cash for their services. And during some of these FOs, P. Diddy would become extremely intoxicated and would hit Cassie in front of the male sex workers. Cassie was repulsed by P. Diddy's demands, but between the physical beating and recognizing his incredible power and incredible temper, Cassie became petrified of her partner and boss and felt that she could not say no. He would even present her with lavish gifts prior to or in the middle of these freakouts, seemingly acknowledging the ways in which these forced sexual encounters constituted work for Cassie, and that he needed to compensate her for this work. At one point, he had given her so many designer bracelets for these FOs, and immediately following his brutal beatings, that she felt that she was shackled by his presence. Frequently, her anxiety before an FO or freak out would become so great that she would become physically ill, sometimes to the point of vomiting. While kneeling over the toilet, P. Diddy would shame her into performing for him, eventually forcing her to get up and proceed with the encounter. She knew firsthand that telling P. Diddy that she did not want to engage in these freak outs was met with anger and violence. In addition, any suggestion that Cassie would refuse the freak out or otherwise report P. Diddy's abuse was met with ultimatums by P. Diddy, who would say that Cassie could not go to the police because she had a lot to lose. Around August 2015, for example, in the middle of a surprise birthday dinner for Cassie's 29th birthday, P. Diddy, poor thing, from 21 to 29, she was shackled with this man. P. Diddy insisted that Cassie leave the party and go to a hotel for a freakout. When Cassie expressed that she did not want to go, P. Diddy had Cassie cornered by his security staff in order to force her to leave with him. After this freakout, P. Diddy and Cassie went back to the hotel room that Cassie was staying in, where some of Cassie's friends were already hanging out. P. Diddy was severely intoxicated, and at one point during the night, picked up one of Cassie's friends like a child and dangled the friend over the balcony of the 17th floor hotel suite. Cassie and her friends were scared by P. Diddy's erratic behavior, and Cassie was heavily sedated because of the drugs that she took to participate in the freakout, and therefore was unable to respond to P. Diddy's terrifying behavior. The freakouts became work for Cassie, and despite her protestations, P. Diddy insisted on these intricately staged and forced sexual encounters between Cassie and various male sex workers. Cassie tries to escape P. Diddy's abuse. So, anytime that she tried to create distance between herself and P. Diddy, he used his networks to find her and convince her to return to his abuse. On multiple occasions, P. Diddy sent his employees to lure Cassie back. In 2011, during a rough patch in P. Diddy and Cassie's relationship, Cassie had a brief relationship with the musician Kid Cudi. When P. Diddy returned from a trip, he demanded another freak out with Cassie, to which she acquiesced, meaning she said yes. I'm sure not by choice. During this freak out, P. Diddy found Cassie's phone and found emails between her and Kid Cudi. P. Diddy became enraged and proceeded to place a manual corkscrew between his fingers and lunged at Cassie, which is insane. Cassie ran away to stay at Kid Cudi's home to escape P. Diddy's wrath. Soon thereafter, one of P. Diddy's staff members told Cassie that she needed to just talk to him, even though P. Diddy was enraged. Feeling like she could not escape P. Diddy and his network of enforcers, Cassie returned to P. Diddy. He hit her several times and then kicked her in the back as she tried to run out the door. She went to her parents' home in Connecticut, where her mother took pictures of the bruises that P. Diddy had left on Cassie's body. In February 2012, during Paris Fashion Week, P. Diddy told Cassie that he was going to blow up Kid Cudi's car and that he wanted to ensure that Kid Cudi was home with his friends when it happened. Around that time, Kid Cudi's car exploded in his driveway. Yikes. Imagine he was in it. Cassie was terrified as she began to fully comprehend what P. Diddy was both willing and able to do to those he believed had slighted him. In 2015, Cassie spoke to a popular music manager at an after-party in a hotel suite in Las Vegas. P. Diddy saw her speaking to this manager and sternly told her to step into the bedroom adjoining the suite. In the bedroom, P. Diddy beat Cassie severely. She ran from corner to corner of the room, trying to avoid P. Diddy's beating and kicking. And when she tried to lock herself into the bathroom, he pushed through and punched and kicked her while she curled up under the toilet. Her screams were drowned out by the loud music playing in the outside area of the hotel suite. When P. Diddy's head of security and assistant saw Cassie after the assault, they began to cry. Cassie had 2 black eyes, a burst and bruised lip, and a huge welt on her forehead. Upon seeing the results of his vicious attack, P. Diddy immediately took steps to conceal his wrongdoing. He forced Cassie to stay at his home in Holmby Hills along with one of his sons. While there, P. Diddy FaceTimed Cassie and stated, "You gotta go up and put more makeup on. My son can't see you like that." Oh, you motherfucker. Oh. Oh. She did put makeup on, per P. Diddy's demands. Cassie felt that she had no choice but to obey her abuser. Even though security guards, assistants, and friends saw the situation that she was in, no one dared to help her or speak up on her behalf. She therefore had no choice but to remain subservient. Later in 2015, while shooting a movie in Cape Town, South Africa, Cassie began a flirtatious relationship with an actor. She spent New Year's Eve with this actor, but P. Diddy soon found out. P. Diddy called the actor and threatened him. The actor proceeded to call Cassie and tell her, "You really need to call P. Diddy." In or around, and also, side note, P. Diddy would throw all these massive parties with A-list celebrities, so either way you cut it, whether in the music industry, Hollywood, or whatever, like, he was not someone that I'm sure anyone wanted to fuck with. So, and I'm sure she felt maybe called or compelled to find solace or protection in any man, or anyone for that matter. P. Diddy's reach went further than she could even fathom. In or around March 2016, during an FO at an Intercontinental Hotel in Century City, Los Angeles, P. Diddy became extremely intoxicated and punched Cassie in the face, giving her a black eye. After he fell asleep, Cassie tried to leave the hotel room, but as she exited, P. Diddy awoke and began screaming at Cassie. He followed her into the hallway of the hotel while yelling at her. He grabbed at her and then took glass vases in the hallway and threw them at her, causing glass to crash around them as she ran to the elevator to escape. She managed to get into the elevator, and when she got to the lobby, quickly took a cab to her apartment. Upon realizing that her running away would cause P. Diddy to be even angrier with her, and completely stuck in a vicious cycle of abuse, Cassie returned to the hotel with the intention of apologizing for running away from her abuser. When she returned, hotel security staff urged her to get back into a cab and go to her apartment, suggesting that they had seen the security footage showing P. Diddy beating Cassie and throwing glass at her in the hotel hallway. Upon information and belief, P. Diddy paid the Intercontinental Century City $50,000 for the hallway security footage from that evening, which would later go on to be I to this day have not seen it because I just don't think my heart could handle it, but apparently footage of him beating Cassie. After this, Cassie left her home in Comstock and went to hide away at a friend's home in Florida. James Cruz, president of Bad Boy Management, tracked Cassie down and told her that her single would not be released if she did not answer P. Diddy's phone calls. Which, wouldn't that be, what's the word? It's when you do an ultimatum in like a business thing, is that not like, I can't remember the term, but I'm pretty sure that's illegal. A woman who worked at Sony Music reached out to her with a similar ultimatum concerning her record. Oh wow, so doubling down. Incredibly, P. Diddy even convinced one of his attorneys to call Cassie at this time. The lawyer then told Cassie that it's in your best interest to call P. Diddy back. To be honest, at that point, I would almost not blame her if she did not want to even have any ties at all with him, like musically or by any means at all. Each time Cassie tried to run away, P. Diddy and his powerful network would force her back to him. P. Diddy's tight hold over her life had irreparably damaged her friendships, which I'm not really surprised by. when you think about friends that have been in abusive relationships and how sometimes, at least for me, I've had to step away at certain periods, can you imagine if it was to this extent? I don't really blame friends for stepping away, especially when it could potentially be a life or death, not just for your friend in that relationship, but also for you. I say that's fair to want to step away. For sure. And then around 2018, when Miss Ventura, which Cassie, was with her friend Carrie Morgan in her house, P. Diddy used his key to get into Cassie's house and came in unannounced. He and Cassie had an altercation, during which P. Diddy threw a hanger at Cassie. Upon information and belief, the incident resulted in a settlement between P. Diddy and Miss Morgan, which is Cassie's friend. And Cassie ended up paying Miss Morgan additional funds in an attempt to resolve the dispute between her close friend and her abusive and controlling boyfriend. The relationship between Cassie and Miss Morgan has been strained since this time. Wow. I mean, if you really take a moment and think about it, it's like, I'm sure that whatever caused P. Diddy to throw or physically assault Cassie's friend likely had something to do with Cassie's friend sticking up for her. And I don't blame Cassie's friend for taking a step back, maybe 20 steps back. But seeing the extreme measures that P. Diddy took to keep a tight hold on Cassie and isolate her from her support network, and having experienced the repercussions of rejecting his demands, Cassie felt that saying no to P. Diddy would cost her something: her family, her friends, her career, or even her life. P. Diddy rapes Cassie. By 2017 and 2018, Cassie became desperate to leave P. Diddy and his abuse of her. She recognized that if she had stayed with him, she would never be able to have a successful career or ever be physically and mentally safe. She therefore became determined to completely break away from P. Diddy and his cycle of abuse and made concerted efforts to avoid him. In September 2018, she joined P. Diddy for a dinner at an Italian restaurant in Malibu, California, for what she believed would be a discussion about concluding their relationship for good. After dinner, P. Diddy and Cassie returned to Cassie's home, which was paid for by P. Diddy. P. Diddy forced himself into her apartment and tried to kiss Cassie. She told him to stop and attempted to push him away. P. Diddy then forcibly pulled off Cassie's clothing and unbuckled her belt. He proceeded to rape Cassie while she repeatedly said no and tried to push him away. Soon thereafter, Cassie took steps to completely separate herself from her longtime abuser, including by leaving the home that he paid for and returning the car that he purchased her, which I'm not surprised about. Like I said before, I've heard rumors of, these billionaire people buying cars for their significant others, and allegations of they could put like a tracking device in it or something like that. So I'm not surprised that she returned the car that he bought her. And despite moving away, Cassie's address was posted online in early 2019, leading to fears for her safety. Cassie, who was under immense duress during the months after P. Diddy raped her, took all steps possible to entirely remove herself from her abuser's ambit, including by entering into contracts to end her record deal with Bad Boy Entertainment. P. Diddy's sexual and physical abuse of Cassie has caused her lifelong harm. As a result of the immense trauma that Cassie has endured for over a decade with P. Diddy, she has suffered and continues to suffer from immense emotional distress. Following her escape from the cycle of abuse and sex trafficking that she endured, she struggled with physical and mental manifestations of her trauma. The birth of her 2 children, however, allowed her a new lease on life and gave her purpose. She credits her children with saving her from the trauma that had consumed over a decade of her life. Except for months where she was pregnant with her children, Miss Ventura struggled with addictions to drugs and alcohol, addictions that were established and fueled by P. Diddy. She turned to substances to drown out the memories of her abuse. Without being intoxicated, she suffered from horrific nightmares of the forced sexual acts that P. Diddy demanded she participate in during the regularly scheduled FOs, and of the physical beatings that she endured throughout her relationship. She had difficulty eating or sleeping, and her relationships with her family suffered. During this time, she frequently had thoughts of ending her life. To rebuild her life and her career, Cassie needed to completely reinvent herself. She checked into inpatient treatment at a rehabilitation center where she first confronted the extent of the trauma that she lives with. She has required intensive therapy and other medical care to recover from P. Diddy's abuse, and she will forever live with the physical and psychological repercussions of the over a decade of violence, fear, and exploitation that she endured at the hands of P. Diddy. Although Cassie was unable to speak up against the years of abuse she endured at the hands of P. Diddy, she has since been able to rebuild her life and confront her trauma thanks to the passage of New York's Adult Survivors Act and California's Sexual Abuse Accountability and Cover-Up Act. She is now ready and able to also confront her abuser and to hold him and those who enabled his abuse accountable for their actions. First cause of action: sex trafficking under 18 U.S.C. Plaintiff repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs. Plaintiff, Cassie, is a victim of sex trafficking within the meaning of 18 U.S.C. and is therefore entitled to bring civil action against the defendants. The defendants' acts and omissions, taken separately and or together, as outlined above, constitute a violation of 18 U.S.C. 1595. Specifically, the defendant, P. Diddy, perpetrated sex trafficking of Cassie by requiring her to engage in forced sexual acts in multiple jurisdictions, and that all defendants benefited from P. Diddy's venture by holding Cassie, an artist signed with defendant Bad Boy Records and otherwise employed by other of the defendant's corporations, captive to P. Diddy's demands and desires. At all relevant times, the defendants participated in and facilitated the harboring and transportation of the plaintiff for purposes of sex induced by force, fraud, or coercion. The defendant corporations have financially and otherwise benefited as a result of these acts and omissions by keeping P. Diddy, the volatile and explosive owner of the defendant corporations, satisfied. They benefited from facilitating his behavior to the extent it kept the mercurial music mogul happy and kept Cassie obedient to P. Diddy and the corporation's interests. Defendant P. Diddy and the defendants Bad Boy Records, Bad Boy Entertainment, and Doe Corporations formed a venture as defined by 18 U.S.C. 1591, given that they constituted a group of two or more individuals associated in fact, whether or not a legal entity. As a direct and proximate result of defendant's unlawful conduct, as alleged here and above, the plaintiff, which is Cassie, has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and other consequential damages. Second cause of action: violation of the New York Services for Victims of Human Trafficking. Plaintiff is a victim of sex trafficking within the meaning of New York Penal Law 230.34 and is therefore entitled to bring a civil action under New York Social Services 483-BB. The defendant's acts and omissions, taken separately and or together as outlined above, constitute a violation of New York Social Services 483-BB. Specifically, the defendant, P. Diddy, perpetrated sex trafficking of Cassie by requiring her to engage in forced sexual acts in the state of New York, and all defendants benefited from P. Diddy's venture by holding Cassie, an artist signed with the defendant's Bad Boy Records and otherwise employed by other defendant Doe corporations, captive to P. Diddy's demands and desires. At all relevant times, defendants participated in and facilitated the harboring and transportation of Cassie for purposes of sex induced by force, fraud, or coercion. The defendant corporations have financially and otherwise benefited as a result of these acts and omissions by keeping P. Diddy, the volatile and explosive owner of these defendant corporations, satisfied. They benefited from facilitating his behavior to the extent that it kept the mercurial music mogul happy and kept Cassie obedient to P. Diddy's and the corporation's interests. As a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful conduct, as alleged here and above, the plaintiff, Cassie, has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and other consequential damages. Third cause of action, violation of California Trafficking Victims Protection Act. Cassie repeats and realleges each and every allegation in all of the preceding paragraphs. All of the above, she just repeats it. Cassie is a victim of sex trafficking within the meaning of California Penal Code 236.1 and is therefore entitled to bring a civil action under California Civil Code 52.5. Defendants' acts and omissions, taken separately and or together as outlined above, constitute a violation of California Civil Code 52.5. Specifically, the defendant P. Diddy's perpetrated sex trafficking of Cassie by requiring her to engage in forced sexual acts in the state of California, and how all of the defendants benefited from P. Diddy's venture by holding Cassie, an artist signed with the defendant Bad Boy Records and otherwise employed by the other defendant Doe corporations, captive to P. Diddy's demands and desires. At all relevant times, defendants participated in and facilitated the harboring and transportation of Cassie for purposes of sex induced by force, fraud, and coercion. The defendant corporations have financially and otherwise benefited as a result of these acts and omissions by keeping P. Diddy, the volatile and explosive owner of these corporations, satisfied. They benefited from facilitating his behavior to the extent it kept the mercurial music mogul happy and kept Cassie obedient to P. Diddy and the corporation's interests. As a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful conduct as alleged here and above, Cassie has suffered physical injury, severe emotional stress and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and other consequential damages. Battery and sexual battery under New York law. Cassie repeats and realleges each and every allegation stated prior. In performing the conduct described above, P. Diddy committed a battery against Cassie because he intentionally engaged in an unlawful, intentional, and offensive touching or application of force to Cassie's person. P. Diddy's actions amount to violations under New York Penal Law 130.50, 130.52, 130.55, and 130.65, as well as analogous California law and the common law of New York and California. As a result of P. Diddy's alleged conduct, Cassie has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress, humiliation, embarrassment, anxiety, economic harm, and consequential damages. And the conduct of P. Diddy, as described above, was willful, wanton, and malicious. At all relevant times, P. Diddy acted with conscious disregard of Cassie's rights and feelings, acted with knowledge of or with reckless disregard for the fact that his conduct was certain to cause injury and or humiliation to Cassie, and intended to cause fear, physical injury, and or pain and suffering to Cassie. By virtue of the foregoing, Cassie is entitled to recover punitive and exemplary damages from P. Diddy according to proof at trial. This action is timely because it falls within CPLR 214-J and is brought during the 1-year time period set forth in that section. Claims herein allege intentional and negligent acts and or omissions for physical, psychological, and other injuries suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute sexual offenses as defined in Article 130 of the New York Penal Law, and such acts and or omissions were committed against Cassie when she was over 18 years of age. The action also falls within California's adult sexual abuse law and is brought during the 3-year time period set forth in that action. Fifth cause of action, sexual assault pursuant to California's Sexual Abuse and Cover-Up Accountability Act. Cassie repeats and realleges each and every allegation previously mentioned. P. Diddy subjected Cassie to sexual abuse, sexual battery, rape, forcible act of sexual penetration, as defined in California Penal Code 234.4, 261, and 289. In doing so, he intended to and did cause harmful and sexually offensive contact with their person and place them in imminent apprehension of such contact. Defendant corporations were entities engaged in a cover-up as defined in California Civil Code 340.16, subsection 4, subsection A, because defendant corporations took concerted efforts to hide evidence relating to the above-described sexual assaults that incentivized individuals to remain silent or prevented information relating to the sexual assaults from becoming public. As a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful conduct, as alleged here and above, Cassie has suffered physical injury, severe emotional distress and anxiety, humiliation, embarrassment, post-traumatic stress disorder, economic harm, and other consequential damages. Sixth cause of action, violation of the Victims of Gender-Motivated Violence Act. The above described conduct of P. Diddy, including but not limited to P. Diddy's repeated physical and sexual assaults of Cassie in New York City, constitutes a crime of violence and a crime of violence motivated by gender against the plaintiff as defined by the New York City VGM VPL. The above described conduct of P. Diddy, including but not limited to P. Diddy's repeated physical and sexual assaults of Cassie in New York City, constitute a crime of violence against Cassie and is a crime of violence motivated by gender as defined in sections 10 to 1103, which is the term crime of violence means an act or series of acts that would constitute a misdemeanor or felony against the person as defined in state or federal law, that would constitute a misdemeanor or felony against property as defined in state or federal law if the conduct presents a serious risk of physical injury to another, whether or not those acts have actually resulted in criminal charges, prosecution, or conviction. And the term crime of violence motivated by gender means a crime of violence committed because of gender or on the basis of gender and due, at least in part, to an animus based on the victim's gender. Defendant corporations enabled P. Diddy's commission of the crime of violence motivated by gender and are therefore also liable. As a direct and proximate result of the aforementioned crime of violence and gender-motivated violence, Cassie has sustained and will continue to sustain monetary damages, physical injury, pain and suffering, serious psychological and emotional distress, entitling her to an award of compensatory and punitive damages, injunctive and declaratory relief, attorney's fees and costs, and other remedies court may deem appropriate. Above described conduct of P. Diddy constitutes a sexual offense as described in or as defined in Article 130 of New York Penal Law. Pursuant to sections 10 to 1105 subsection A, this cause of action is timely because it is commenced within 2 years and 6 months after September 1st, 2022. Seventh cause of action, sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and hostile work environment. The defendants discriminated against Cassie on the basis of her gender in violation of the NYSHRL by subjecting Cassie to disparate treatment based upon her gender, including but not limited to subjecting her to sexual assault and or harassment, rape, and a hostile work environment. as a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation of the NYSHRL, Cassie has suffered and continues to suffer monetary and or economic harm for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and or relief. As a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation of the NYSHRL, Cassie has suffered and continues to suffer severe mental anguish and emotional distress for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. The defendant's unlawful and discriminatory actions were intentional, done with malice, and or showed a deliberate, willful, wanton, and reckless indifference to Cassie's rights under the NYSHRL, for which Cassie is entitled to an award of punitive damages. This action is timely because it falls within CPLR 214-J and is brought during the 1-year time period set forth in that section. Claims brought herein allege intentional and negligent acts and or omissions for physical, psychological, and other injuries suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute sexual offenses as defined in Article 130 of the New York Penal Law, and such acts and or omissions were committed against Cassie when she was over 18 years of age. Eighth cause of action, which is sexual harassment, gender discrimination, and hostile work environment. Defendants have discriminated against Cassie on the basis of her gender in violation of the NYCHRL by subjecting Cassie to disparate treatment based upon her gender, including but not limited to subjecting her to sexual assault and or harassment, rape, and a hostile work environment. As a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation of the NYCHRL, Cassie has suffered and continues to suffer monetary and or economic harm for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. As a direct and proximate result of the defendant's unlawful discriminatory conduct in violation of the NYCHRL, Cassie has suffered and continues to suffer severe mental anguish and emotional distress for which she is entitled to an award of monetary damages and other relief. The defendant's unlawful and discriminatory actions were intentional, done with malice, and showed a deliberate, willful, wanton, and reckless indifference to the plaintiff's rights under the NYCHRL, for which a plaintiff is entitled to an award of punitive damages. This action is timely because it falls within CPLR 214-J and is brought within the 1-year time period set forth. Claims brought herein allege intentional, negligent acts and or omissions for physical, psychological, and other injury suffered as a result of conduct that would constitute sexual offenses as defined in Article 130 of New York Penal Law, and such acts and or omissions were committed against Cassie when she was over 18 years of age. Prayer for relief, which is basically what she's asking for as a result of the abuse or the suffering that she is alleged, which I 100% believe her for sure. So she's basically asking for money, but essentially what we do know is that Diddy settled with Cassie pretty quick after this, which would make you think, if in fact what she was saying wasn't true, you would think that he would have no problem to, take it to court. However, the reason why I, in my opinion, allegedly believe that Diddy settled with Cassie about this was only a Pandora's box. And even just this alone was the Pandora's box, which started this portal of more people coming forward. And because historically, all it takes is for one person to have the guts and the balls to come forward, and historically that's really how it works, is the one victim has the balls to come forward and talk about or admit their abuse, and then after that it just begins a whirlwind of other victims coming forward. And I truly believe that that's what happened here with Cassie, and kudos to her for having the balls to do so. And I think truly because of that it was the beginning of the end for Diddy, and obviously he didn't work alone. He would throw, industry-wide parties where many people were there, and I'm sure there's many people that were also involved, and I truly hope and believe that they all get exposed. And this is something that's been happening for a long time, for sure. There's been child stars. How long has it been a thing where it's like child stars, mostly more so I would say in like Hollywood acting, they'd be a child star and then all of a sudden they get addicted to heavy drugs or drinking, and it's very repetitive, but everyone would always point the finger at that, child star. Oh, they just got too much money too young. And they never really took a moment to think, like, what is it that's driving them to really do that? And why is it that it's happening so often? And I truly hope and believe, now we're in the age of Aquarius, and I really truly hope and believe that all of these disgusting people will be exposed, and we've had enough. And truly sometimes all it takes is one person having the guts and the courage to come forward, and after that people also feel comfortable enough to also speak and come forward because of that one person, because there's strength in numbers. So shout out to Cassie, shout out to anyone that has ever had the courage to come forward and speak about their abuse, whether it's in Hollywood, whether it's in the music industry, whether it's in any capacity. It takes a lot of courage, and I have so much respect and admiration for people that do that. And so I have been following this case so far, and I will continue to do so. If you come across anything that you wish for me to discuss, whether it's this case or any other case, please let me know. But yeah, that's we've been here for quite a while, and yeah, so thank you for sitting here and reading this with me, or being a part of this video or the stream. I hope that you stick around. I hope to see you for the next one. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I hope that together we can continue to watch this unveil, and hopefully justice, and I truly believe that justice will be served as it should be. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Let me know if there's anything you want me to talk about in the future. Yeah, thank you so much, and I hope you have a great night, and yeah, thank you.